Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a spooky treat for you. October starts off my favorite time of year, and I want to get into the Halloween spirit. The next few videos you see from me will be focused on scary stories. Now, I could make a Reddit reading and immediately get a lot of views, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to start with some stories of my own before I start reading other people's stories. There will be some kind of organization to these videos, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Today we will be focusing on my haunted house. Please remember, it is okay if you don't believe in the paranormal, and I think we should approach media with rationality and skepticism. But since this is for entertainment purposes, please try not to ruin it for anyone else. If you could please suspend your disbelief for a few and enjoy the vibes, it would be much appreciated. These phenomena really did happen to me, and I will recount the stories to the best of my ability. Trigger warning for mentions of self-harm, abuse, death, and mental illness. Scene setting. My parents knew the former owners of our house since they were neighbors, and are friends with their distant relatives as well. They were very nice people who unfortunately passed away when I was very young. Apparently prior to their deaths, they had instructed their children to sell the house to my parents if they ever showed interest, even if they couldn't afford market value. So that's part of the reason we were able to get this house, and since they were already neighbors, we didn't have to move very far. The house, like all the houses on the block, was almost 100 years old at the time, and had undergone many renovations, some of which half-assed, which gave the house a bit of a weird vibe, charming at times and frustrating at others. The couple were known to be rather quirky. I was already showing sensitivities at my young age, and my mother had lived in many a haunted house prior. Still, nobody felt any abnormal presence in the house leading up to the sale or immediately after moving in. Story 1: Earthquake. My sister and I ended up sharing the master bedroom, a large bright room for large windows facing south, on the front towards the street. It was apparently the same room all the kids stayed in together, at least when they were young. Sometimes I, but more often my sister, would wake up feeling our bed shaking violently. It startled us and really upset my sister. We tried to explain it away, but there wasn't an explanation we could think of. While Ohio can have earthquakes, they're generally not powerful enough to shake the bed like that. We were too far from the train tracks, there were no storms, etc. After we had lived there for a few years, one of their daughters reached out and asked us if we noticed anything unusual while we were there. When my mother mentioned the beds shaking, she laughed. That was how her father woke them up sometimes. He would sneak in, grab the bottom of their mattress and shake it, shouting, "Earthquake!" I think he was trying to carry on the tradition with us. Story 2: The House Curse. Another lighthearted one for those of you with a sweet tooth. My mother loves baking, and she very rarely fails at a recipe, even if it's brand new to her. Her favorite holiday is Christmas. Her side of the family would always host a bake-off the week before Christmas. All the women and young children would gather at someone's house and bake goodies all day. It was a great bonding experience, and the older women would pass down knowledge and recipes to the younger ones. Then, of course, you left with a large sample of what was made that day to take to your Christmas parties and dinners, or just graze on leading up to the day. One thing she really loved to make, or have made, were sugar cookies. But every time she tried to make sugar cookies in the house, they would fail. It would always be something different, too flat, gooey, burnt, etc. She tried to diagnose the problem and adjust accordingly, but just could not do it. She also had other family try, but to no avail. She later found out that the former lady of the house, who also loved baking and was very good at it, could not for the life of her make sugar cookies. She decided that nobody would ever make sugar cookies in her house. It seemed that she meant it, and long after she had passed, nobody could ever make sugar cookies in the house. Thankfully, after much pleading, my mom successfully made sugar cookies in the house. It only took 15 years. Unfortunately, it seems the curse still stands. Mom is the only exception. Rest in pieces, Sugar Cookies 2023. Story 3: A Lasting Impression. My parents received several housewarming gifts when they moved, but they didn't need many of them, so they put them away for later. One of these gifts was a plastic cutting board with a set of 4 steak knives. They tucked it away in the back of the pantry, still wrapped in plastic. We noticed after a few years that our steak knives were coming up missing. Occasionally we would find one in an odd place like the attic, the basement, a storage room, or a toolbox in the garage. My parents had ample tools and didn't ever need to use a steak knife, but found that the previous owner used to use knives to turn screws, and his wife would always have a fit about it, but he never listened. No longer having enough knives for the 4 of us to use for dinner that night, they remembered the cutting board and pulled it out to use. There were only 3 knives. You could still see the impression in the plastic where the 4th knife would have been. It hadn't slid down, and there were no holes in the plastic wrapping. It was completely around the cutting board. My mother threw the whole set away. Oddly, the knives stopped coming up missing, but now we keep losing our small spoons. Story 4, Furry Friends. Shortly after moving in, before we ever had any pets, we would see a fluffy white tail out of the corner of our eyes or hear a dog collar. When I moved to my own bedroom as a teenager, it was the room that the former owners usually slept in. Sometimes I feel what feels like a medium-sized dog jump up on the bed with me and lay on my feet or beside my legs. I never feel afraid, although it does startle me sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does still happen on occasion. We've had a couple of dogs and a cat since then that have all passed away, and I like to think they keep each other company. In fact, I have seen glimpses of our past dogs in the house or in the backyard, heard them walk, scratch, or howl, and even felt one of them nudge me. I also felt a warm spot on the floor where our most recent dog would usually lay that was nowhere near a vent or appliance. He would lay there because it was cool, so to feel it warm felt like a sign he was chilling with me once again. A few months after he passed, my dad set up motion sensor lights in our upstairs hallway. Sometimes the lights would trigger without movement, light flashes or shadows. You could also sometimes hear what sounded like tiny clicks of dog nails on the hard wood. I like to think he was patrolling and making sure we were okay, like he used to do before he had cancer and couldn't take the stairs anymore. Story 5, A Recurring Nightmare. I used to, and occasionally still do, sleepwalk. It was a lot worse when I was a younger child, under 8 years old I believe. I used to have this dream that I would get up and walk to the top of the stairs. I would look down towards the bottom and see myself wearing the pajamas I went to bed in that night. I would hear disembodied voices chanting to me, telling me to jump, then I would. I would feel myself jump. I would feel myself fall. I would wake up before I hit the ground, feeling as if I fell back into my bed. After a few times I told my parents. I was no stranger to weird nightmares, and they chalked it up to that. One night, my father heard me whimpering. He got up to see me standing at the top of the stairs, peering down into the darkness below, looking terrified. I kept mumbling, "I don't wanna." He shuffled me back off to bed. When I was having breakfast the next morning, he told me he saw me, that the dream was, at least in part, real, that I was sleepwalking to the top of the stairs. This of course startled me and my parents because it was possible I would jump in my sleep. Fortunately, it seemed addressing that the dreams were real was enough to stop them forever. Story 6, Imaginary George. There were 2 trees in our backyard, one soft maple and one sugar maple. The soft maple was already on the outs and later died completely. We had it partially cut, but it stood there for quite some time before we paid someone to remove it outright. As a lot of children do, my sister and I both had imaginary friends. I never saw my friend as if she were real. It was more some weird superhero girl that I wanted to be like. If I were to describe her now, she sounds more like a horror movie monster, but she was entirely made up and controlled by me, therefore she was friendly. My sister, on the other hand, had a friend named George. He was quite plain, a middle-aged, medium-build man in coveralls. Sometimes he would talk to her. She felt a little uneasy about him, but nothing particularly negative ever came of it. Weirdly, she said he lived in that dead tree, and when it was removed, she stopped seeing him altogether. She swears now that it must have been a ghost. Maybe she's right. Story 7, Shadowy Scares. One time I was taking a shower. I had to try to be quick because there was a thunderstorm nearby. The bathroom at the time had dark wood paneling, several strange tiled mirrors with paint splatter on them, no window and a single fluorescent bulb. I already didn't like the fact that I could see my body through the partially frosted glass in the adjacent mirror. Just enough to see a figure, but not enough to check the features were mine. But the dark wood, the lack of natural light, and the single fluorescent made for a dark and flickering shower. I was used to seeing 2 shadows in the shower. One close to me, darker, and one a little further away, lighter. They were always, of course, facing the same direction and clearly had my side profile. I was close to, but not quite finished, and I saw my second shadow was facing the opposite direction. When I stopped to look at it, the mouth opened wide, and I saw sharp teeth and thought I heard a growl. It scared me. I jumped out of the shower and immediately started toweling off when I heard the thunder. I must have been either slower than I thought or the storm was approaching much faster. It sounded very nasty outside, and my mom came to tell me we were under a tornado warning, so I quickly dressed and left to take shelter. While it scared me quite badly, I think the figure did that on purpose to make sure I would get out in time and not be in as much danger. A few times, when I fell asleep on the couch in a specific spot, I would wake up to see a shadowy figure over top of me. It looked like a man, but he had no face, just shadow. I felt like I couldn't breathe, at least not well. It wouldn't last very long. I would then wake up in my bed instead of the couch. My mom told me it was a combination of sleep paralysis and my dad carrying me up to bed. But why would I feel like someone was choking me? And why would I not recognize his frame, his face, his smell, or his voice? Sometimes one of my parents would peek in at us to see if we were asleep or needed anything. I would usually hear them, at least if it was early in the night, and open my eyes to look at them. Then they would usually give the shush signal and go to their room. On occasion, I would hear this and look at the door, and there would be someone standing there that looked the size and shape of one of my parents. But I couldn't see their face, despite there being ample light and always being able to see their face at that angle. The figure could never enter the room, and never told me to shush. They would usually back away and disappear into the hallway darkness. When I moved into my own room, I had a little bit of trouble sleeping. It was my parents' old room. Unlike their new bedroom and my sister's room, I didn't have carpet and could easily hear sounds from the whole house during the night. I often heard the wood boards creaking in sequence like someone walking. I would wake to see a figure standing over me when my bed was closer to the entry door, and when I moved it opposite, I would see the figure standing over by the door. There was a creepy old mirror over by that door on the wall. I couldn't see the mirror unless in front of it or on the other side of my room. The mirror always made me feel uneasy, even in the daytime. This entity felt a lot less helpful or goofy. It felt like it was trying to harm me and made me very scared. There were times I got up and left the room and felt like it followed me into the hall. Sometimes I would tell it to go away, and it would, only for me to see it in my dream and get attacked. There were numerous occasions where I dreamed this entity was violating me, and I would throw my blanket at it like a net and wake up, seeing my blanket at the same spot it landed in the dream. My mom almost thought I was schizophrenic until my other family members started to have run-ins with it too. I feel like someone did something horrible to someone in my room. Probably, as much as I hate to say it, sexual assault and or physical abuse. This was probably a family member of theirs. I often still feel a dark presence in my room, but we have since done a lot of warding and protections to keep it at bay. It seems confined to very specific areas, and I don't feel afraid of it anymore. Story 8, Sister Sensitive. My sister claimed to have experiences as well, although most of them were not brought up until she was an adult. Here is a rapid-fire list. Thinking she heard mom or dad calling for her when she knew nobody else was home. Seeing someone out of the corner of her eye that wasn't there. Seeing shadow entities behind her in the mirror. Seeing a young girl floating in the middle of my room in the middle of the day. Seeing the eyes move on one of my paintings. Getting random 3-clawed scratches on her back. Seeing her face morph when she looked in the mirror. Hearing me moving around in my room, opening and closing drawers, etc. But seeing I wasn't there when she went to talk to me. Hearing people walking around upstairs or walk down the stairs when everyone was already downstairs, random chills. Hearing someone walk up and stand at her bedroom door, opening the door and not seeing anyone, but never hearing them walk away. Having her door open randomly, also having her closet be open when she went to her room when she swore it was closed. Hearing things fall upstairs but never finding anything out of place. There are only a few of these that I have sort of witnessed, but I believe her for about half of them. Story 9, Your Standard Poltergeist. This is where things get textbook horror movie, things that are harder to explain but sound way too fantastical. My mood changes sometimes when I'm alone, specifically in my room. It's like I get a lot darker, a lot sourer, a lot more anxious. I've only ever self-harmed when I was in that room, and am far more likely to have suicidal thoughts or dreams about suicide when I'm sleeping in my room. My dreams are all over the place, but my nightmares are more vivid and frequent in my room. When my dad had to stay home for a few months after a workplace injury, him and our, at the time, puppy would take naps just after noon, only to be woken up to people walking around and sounding like they were rearranging the furniture upstairs. He would yell up and tell them to be quiet, and they would stop immediately, only to start up again 30 minutes later. Our puppy would bark and growl up the stairs or at the ceiling while it was happening. My mom did a temporary protection on the house by drawing the fish symbol associated with Jesus over every entryway. That included attic access and closet doors. But my dad, who is always protective to the point that he does things before thinking, refused to draw one on their door. He challenged the entity out loud, saying not to mess with his family, but to mess with him. That night he fell asleep first, as usual, and my mom was in the other room watching the news. She heard him start shouting for her, but it sounded strained. When she went to check on him, his back was arched, and his eyes were open and rolled back in his head. She thought he was having a medical emergency, but was able to shake him awake. All he would say at first was that she should go check on us immediately. Mom went and checked on us, and we were sound asleep. So asleep that even I didn't hear her come in, even though it wasn't quite midnight. We hadn't had such a peaceful night's sleep in years. When he knew we were safe, he told her about the dream. He was back in the old apartment across the street. He walked through the hallway and this orb went into his chest. He felt himself lifting off the ground and felt like he was losing control of his limbs but was fighting back. Then he saw the bedroom and my mom coming in to wake him, before he snapped out of it. That entity tried to possess my father that night because he called it out. We decided we needed to put a stronger protection on the house, so my mom went to work finding a protection spell she was comfortable doing, even though she is Christian. When we were blessing and cleansing the house in preparation, it took her voice. She couldn't speak and felt like it was hard to breathe. I had to place my hand on her shoulder and speak for her. I managed to say the blessings, but it felt like a red-hot poker in my throat the whole time. Then, we made a protection bottle for the home that my dad hid where we could not find it, a place only he could reach. The amount of activity decreased a lot, but eventually it ramped back up, starting small and getting back to the really bad stuff. We would hear music boxes start playing. One of the creepier ones I had were antique clown dolls that played circus music. Even though I never wound them and went to great lengths to make sure there was no more tension to play the music, they would activate at night. Sometimes random items would go missing for months only to turn up in plain sight right next to us. We would also notice random items, usually with sentimental value, would be moved noticeably, such as being turned completely around or moved over enough to expose the clean spot the object left in the gathered dust. We kept complaining of a growing presence in the hallway, so my dad said he would sleep in the spare entertainment room. It is a small, oddly shaped room with no door. It's sometimes uncomfortable to be in there. He laid out a sleeping bag and went to sleep. He said he was doing it to make us feel more comfortable, but apparently this was seen as another challenge. Not even an hour after we went to bed, things in the room were falling on him. At first he thought he knocked into the shelf next to him, but the objects kept coming from all over the room, getting hurled at him with more and more force. He got up and turned the light on, and we came out of our rooms, but it had stopped. He was pretty shaken up about it as we stood in the hallway listening to him. Then we saw another object fly across the room. We all went downstairs to sleep for the night. My sister was experiencing a bad leak in her room, so my dad went into the attic to see what was going on. He found the source of the leak, a broken window above her room, and put up a piece of plywood up as a temporary fix. This is when he noticed that the bottle was gone. Apparently this was near where he hid it. It didn't fall, break, mold, lose liquid, or anything like that. It was literally gone. My sister was getting antsy. She said she'd had a dream that he fell through her ceiling and got electrocuted by her overhead fan. We stood at the ladder, watching and praying together, clinging to our cross necklaces. He made a misstep and his foot came through her ceiling right next to the fan. Thankfully, he regained his balance and made it back down. He later told us he felt like he was pushed. This time we took a slightly different approach. I was older, and I had proven that I could see the protection and knew long before things got bad that it was gone. My mom modified the spell and had me do most of it. Instead of one bottle, we did one for every household member. My father buried them at the corners of our property. This protection has been steadfast ever since. We still get the occasional visit from family members, and I still have very weird dreams. But I feel like I am in control here, that everything must go through me. I often wake in the night saying no, quietly but firmly, and all is calm. I roll back over and sleep. Story 10, a family visitor. Before my dog died, he would alert at the same time every day that someone was at the door. They never came in and we would never open it. As I said earlier, I still hear and feel the presence of our pets in the house. Sometimes I smell a certain cologne or get familiar faces when I take pictures of our campfire. I know I'm never truly alone, and this comforts me. Someone keeps opening the cabinets in the kitchen. Please stop taking our dishes. Shortly after my grandma died, we felt her presence. We could see her reflected in the TV screen. Our dog looked at the couch like she was on it. The cushion was even warm. Shortly after my uncle died, my parents were crying and talking about him, and the tissue box got thrown at them from across the room. My mom is almost done obtaining her bachelor's degree. When she got really discouraged one day, her mom's bachelor's degree that she took and hung up after she died fell to the ground. The frame broke in perfect pieces, the glass did not break, and the degree did not get even the tiniest fold. Mom took this as a sign from Grandma to keep going. There are many more stories I could tell you, but I have more videos to post in preparation for this hallowed eve. If you liked what you heard, please leave a like on the video. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon to get notified of new videos. You can find my Twitch and other socials in the description below. If you would like to support me monetarily, you can leave a tip via Ko-fi, link in the description. If you have any stories of your own you would like to add, comment below. Thank you so much for watching and have a spooky day.